is the Patriots Prayer Podcast. It's a tremendous show, one of the greatest shows in the history of the world.
This is Bryson Gray, and you are watching the Patriots Prayer.
PPN, you're doing the right thing.
On the Patriots Prayer Network. Thank you all.
Falling, they all say, gather the faithful now and pray. The Patriots Prayer. The Patriots Prayer. All the wicks are trimmed, oil is filled to the brim. Let me change it somehow. I'm the radical now. America's falling, they all say. Gather the faithful now and pray. The Patriots.
Good evening, Patriots. Let me cut right to the chase. The radical left is not just a political opponent. They're a direct and immediate danger to the American way of life. For too long, we've tried to have polite conversation and debates while they'll bulldoze their way through every single value that this country was built on. And let's be clear, it wasn't by accident. It's absolutely deliberate. See, the left wants to dismantle the foundations that made this country the greatest force for freedom in human history. They call it progress. But what they're really pushing for is chaos, division, and ultimately control. They are out to destroy our schools with woke indoctrination, convincing our kids to hate the very country that gives them the freedom to speak their minds. They erode the law and order, demonize police, and then act shocked when crimes skyrocket. They flood the border with no regard for the rule of law, turning a blind eye to the drugs and the crime, as well as the exploitation that occurs. And they lie. They lie to your face every single damn day. They say they care about minorities, but their policies have kept the communities trapped in poverty that they say they care about for decades. They say they care about the workers, but they ship jobs overseas and then they saddle us with endless regulations. They say they want unity, but all they ever do is pit us against one another. Black versus white, rich versus poor, men versus women. Division isn't a side effect. It is their agenda. It's their number one agenda. But you know, the worst part is they hate you. They hate you. They hate people who go to work every day, people who believe in God, people who raise their kids to know right from wrong. If you love America, if you stand for the flag, if you dare think for yourself, they see you as an enemy. Far be it for anyone to be an individual. Well, I've got news for them. The real enemy is their agenda, their obsession with absolute power, their unquenchable thirst for control. They want to rewrite history and tear apart the Constitution and burn the American dream to the ground. Well, like most people have already said, not on our watch. We are the last line of defense against the machine that wants to crush freedom under the weight of globalism, socialism, and identity politics. It's time to stop pretending to be polite and start fighting back. If they want to cancel us, let them try. If they want to call us names, let them, because we're not backing down. We're not apologizing for loving this country. See, this is the fight of our lives, folks. This is about preserving a nation where hard work matters, where families thrive, where freedom reigns. The American way of life is non-negotiable. So to the left, I say this. We're awake now, not woke. Awake. And we're coming for every school board, every state house, every seat in Washington that you have poisoned with your destructive ideology. Because this is our country. And we're taking it back. That simple. So thank you guys so much for joining us today on the Patriots Prayer Podcast. And we have one hell of a show for you today. Got a special guest with us today. You know him probably best from TikTok. You've probably seen him on X as well. Always sharing a great ordeal of information. Really good stuff. Patriot Dad. And we want to say thank you and welcome to the Patriots Prayer Podcast. Thank you for joining us today. We will be back right after these messages, guys.
This is the end, beautiful friend. This is the end, my only friend. The end of our elaborate plans. The end of everything that stands. The end. No safety or surprise, the end. I'll never look.
As we age, we lose a bit of energy. Of course, that's not our fault. Our bodies change as we grow. Healing patches rejuvenate your cells and in the skin play a key role in the aging process. Research has found that as we age, the number and function of these cells decline, which can lead to a decrease in skin elasticity and the development of wrinkles. But what if there was a product that could restore that spunk for more than just our skin? There is, and it does. The product draws out other huge benefits such as more energy, better sleep, reduced stress, and pain management. If you would like more information, please go to miraclehealingtherapy.com. That's miraclehealingtherapy.com. Here's that website address once again, miraclehealingtherapy.com.
Folks, thank you for hanging out today. I see Leslie in the chats. What's up, Leslie? And Dr. Gold, Marie Hicks. Guys, thank you for joining the Patriot Podcast today. And I have with us today Patriot Dad. And you got, I absolutely love your TikToks, guy. I kind of get lost in there. You the first one I ever caught, the first TikTok you did that I ever caught, you were talking about Mark Elias. You were talking about the Project 25 ordeal they were trying to misrepresent, and you gave just a wealth of information. But tell us, just kind of give us the rundown on Project 2025, and
wow, yeah, happy to. So real quick, just a heads up, guys, I'm having some power fluctuation here. So if it goes dark, I'm not connected to a router, so I'll be able to keep talking, and then the lights will hopefully flicker back on. But so Project 2025 kind of became a hobby for me earlier in the summer. I started hearing rumblings about it in the leftist media, and I've had my ears to the pulse of the left for a very, very long time. I've been following politics for probably 20, 25 years, and have been pretty actively engaged at the ground level here locally where I live. And just noticed, I understand how the left thinks. I understand how they operate, and propaganda has been the name of their game. I mean, heck, going all the way back to, the end of the Second World War, when they started pushing out this concept of fascism versus communism and dropped it into academia. So I've been studying the left for a very long time. And I heard them start talking about this thing called Project 2025. And honestly, I had never heard of it at that point. I just didn't know what it was. So I decided to go actually pull up Project 2025, and I read a good part of it. I didn't read the entire thing at first. I mean, it's almost 900 pages long, but I read a lot of it. Because one thing that separates the left from the right is that we actually like to do our research. We like to understand the issues and understand the concepts and truly be able to speak intelligently about the things that are important to us. And as soon as I saw that the Heritage Organization was behind it, I'm like, well, this is interesting, because I've been a fan of the Heritage Foundation for a long time. And so I decided to read it. And then sometime around late spring, I started hearing all this rumbling about Project 2025. And what I was hearing about on TikTok and on X and other places didn't line up with what I was reading. Like they were saying things on TikTok that just wasn't in Project 2025 at all.
Right.
I mean, I think the first video that I saw about it was a young, articulate young man who was talking about how Project 2025 was going to reauthorize slavery in the United States, and he actually had a reference to a page in the Project 2025 document where you could go look up to see the citation. So I did. It wasn't there. It wasn't there at all. And it's so what we were seeing on the internet really was basically just a bunch of lies about Project 2025. So I guess I've on TikTok, I've kind of become a bit of a fact checker. I've kind of morphed into this role where I like to take propaganda and debunk it. So I started searching, and really I love to use the left's own sources to debunk them. So I went straight to Google and just started typing in what I was seeing on these videos. And it took me directly to a document called the People's Guide for Project 2025.
Now,
and I'm like, well, that's weird.
Right? That was the difference, right? It was a Democrat website put out by a guy named Mark Elias, and it was a PDF on that website, and it was called a project or a guide to Project 2025. So his interpretation.
It was called the People's Guide to Project 2025. Oh, there goes the power. It's coming back on. Yeah, the People's Guide to Project 2025. So what they decided to do is in that document, they actually put a quote or a header there that says, "We've read Project 2025 so that you don't have to." Essentially, what they're telling people is don't bother going to look at the source material. Just trust what we're going to tell you about it. And sure enough, as I was reading through as I was reading through the People's Guide to Project 2025, I started noticing that what I was hearing on TikTok is exactly what I was seeing in the People's Guide to Project 2025, all the way up to the sources, the pages that they are referencing. That, by the way, is not in the Project 2025 document, but the People's Guide to Project 2025 was giving references and citations of where people could go find stuff. So I thought that was interesting. I'm like, well, that's weird. Why would anybody need to put together a version of something,
right,
unless they don't want people to understand what's actually in the real thing? So being curious, I decided to keep digging, and I went to the organization that funded the People's Guide to Project 2025, and it's an organization called Democracy Forward. And I'd never heard of Democracy Forward, but I started looking through the about pages and finding out who's on the board and who's on the staff of this Democracy Forward. And it was all the radical left-wing lawyers and attorneys and propagandists that you would typically expect to see. And all the way down at the bottom, it gives you a list of who their board of directors are. And it showed Mark Elias as the head of the board of directors, and Ron Klain, who also sits on the board. And if you know who Ron Klain is, he's been Joe Biden's right-hand man for decades and was actually his chief of staff until about a year ago when he left the company, or when he left the White House. So Mark Elias, Ron Klain put together this propaganda piece. And they started using this propaganda piece really as a fear tactic to try to convince people that the Trump agenda was going to allow for slavery to be reinstituted, was going to permanently ban contraceptives, which is not in the document at all, and just a whole host of different ridiculous ideas. And they were using it to lie to people because they knew most of their base wasn't going to spend the time to actually go read the document, because that's not what Democrats do.
Nope. And that's the main thing that separates the right from the left, is we'll actually go do the research. We won't listen to the propaganda. Most of us recognize it now. As soon as we hear it, if it's usually over the top, we'll go look and we'll see what the truth is. And we've said it on here multiple times. That is literally the difference between the right and left. We will actually do our research. Now, I have a whole litany of things that we're going to go down, everything from the border to a CRT and our schooling. But before I do, I mean, the obvious thing right now is what's going on in LA. And we contrast that with what we've seen go on in, let's say, Maui, for instance, or North Carolina for instance, and we see a drastic contrast between how the Democrat state was treated and how these other ones were treated. Not that Maui's not a Democrat. I mean, Hawaii is as liberal as they come, but for some reason, California is getting this preferential treatment. About 5 years ago, Trump went out to California and he did this right here.
And you have so much water, and all those fields that are right now barren, the farmers would have all the water they needed. And you could revert water up into the hills where you have all the dead forests, where the forests are so brittle. Because no place is like California. I go to Austria. The head of Austria tells me, we have trees that are much more flammable than what you have in California. We never have forest fires because they maintain their forests. And you have all that water that could be used as water, what they call water flow, where where the land would be damp. And you'd stop many of these horrible fires that are costing billions and billions of dollars by the federal government, etc. So one thing I'm going to do for California, vote for me, California. I'm going to give you safety. I'm going to give you a great border. And I'm going to give you more water than almost anybody has. And the farmers up north are going to be able to use 100% of their land, not 1% of their land.
So pretty basic stuff. If California deforests, doesn't divert money away from their fire department, but actually spends it in their communities on their people instead of being a sanctuary city, instead of DEI programs, putting merit in the back seat and prioritizing diversity and inclusion and equity. And I hate that word equity because it's another term for an assurance of an outcome instead of opportunity. So what we're doing, in fact, is we're creating a whole new victim class, all the way from our military to industry in the United States. And people are overlooked based on the color of their skin, the nature of their genitalia, or even country of origin, depending on a multitude of factors. But what do you say about all of this?
Look, I mean, I think this is a failure of leadership from top to bottom. I understand the desire to want to put this on at the lap of DEI, but I actually think that's a bit of a cop-out. And the reason I say that is because the DEI fire chief warned the mayor when the mayor was slashing their budget that if you do this, you're gonna reduce our ability to be prepared if something catastrophic were to happen. So
That's right.
I'm not a fan of DEI at all. I think it's destructive from top to bottom, but this goes much deeper than just DEI. This is a total failure of leadership from Donald Trump to the insurance companies who have already pulled out in a lot of instances from LA and from the state of California and said that because you are not doing basic proper maintenance to protect your state against wildfires, we're not going to continue to insure your citizens. They warned the state, and they've been warning the state for years. Experts have been warning the state. Hell, Smokey the Bear has been warning the state of California for years that they need to do their stinking part. I mean, come on. Everybody knows that if you don't take care of your forest floors, you're going to create an environment where really nasty things can happen. And Gavin Newsom, I think, is singularly responsible for creating a culture where it's more important for them to virtue signal to the world that they're going to take care of illegal immigrants before they are going to protect the citizens of LA and the citizens of their state. I think it's disgusting what he's doing. I think he is absolutely disqualified from ever holding a political office again, from my perspective. And I want to go a step further. I did a video on this the other day. So Joe Biden came out in front of the cameras and basically said, we're going to pay the federal government, the taxpayer, you and me, us, 100%. We're going to pay 100% of the recovery for 180 days or something like that. First of all, Joe Biden does not have the authority to make that call. That has to go through Congress. Congress has to make the decision on whether they're going to do that. So the fact that he would attempt to slap 100% of the recovery on the taxpayers instead of going through the process that he's supposed to go through tells me all you need to know about Joe Biden and his authoritarian mindset. Number two, if the taxpayer is going to pay for rebuilding and recovery of California at this point, I mean, how many years in a row have we had wildfires out in California? It's been several years in a row, over and over and over again. It happens every year.
Gavin Newsom campaigned on the back end of a big fire in California, which is how he got elected, by basically harping on this particular issue. Have you heard anything about Mayor Bass and her affiliation with this communist group? What is it called? Anti-American communist group called and I'm going to butcher this name, but the Venceramos Brigade.
Yeah, I've heard about it. I've started to do a little bit of research into it. I haven't dove deep enough into it yet, but I'm not at all surprised that somebody rose through the ranks of the Democrat Party that has ties to communist organizations. That's who they are. But real quick, let me go back to the point I was trying to make. If the Congress is going to agree to cover 100% of the recovery effort, I think it has to come with conditions. I think every single person in the state of California in a leadership position that had any role in deciding to divert resources away from preparing their state for this type of a disaster has to resign before they get a single penny from the American taxpayer to help them recover. I'm happy to help out the people of California, but that leadership has to go. The governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, the mayor, everybody, city council, they all of them need to resign before we spend a dime on them.
Larry Elder recalled him a few years ago, and I said, even back then, anyone who voted for Gavin Newsom should be stuck with his policies. You shouldn't be able to move to, Texas and Florida and go infect those places with your politics after you voted to keep California red. I mean, Blue, you should stay right where you're at and deal with the policies and the fallout of your choice at the ballot box. But back to Ms. Bass. My understanding of this group, from everything that I saw, I probably saw the same video and material. A lot of you guys on here, we have 3,200 people watching this right now. I saw the same video as you guys did, and my understanding is this group swore fidelity to the idea of overthrowing capitalism in the United States and to Castro himself. And she was going out there monthly. Now, the group was infiltrated by someone else who was able to bring this information out, and it was made public. But you're right. I'm not surprised at all that someone with a communistic ideology has rose through the ranks in the Democrat Party. It's it's like who supports you? The left likes to always try to get Trump on his supporters, and they ask, well, look, why do these people support you? Why do those people support you? Well, the communists of America support the Democrat Party. David Duke supports the Democrat Party. Antifa supports the Democrat Party. The DSA, obviously, the Democrat organization, foundation. And in my own research with the DSA, I'm looking at members like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, who are members of the DSA, yet they hold political office. The difference between them and people in the United States that hold political office while maintaining a membership to an otherwise communist organization is there is a law on house.gov that anyone can fact check me on. It's called INA 212. And INA 212 states that if you come to our border and you belong to a communist offset, any division of a communist party, you're ineligible for citizenship in the United States. You can't come in. Yet these people came in, they're holding office, and they belong to this group, along with 138 other Democrats who hold office. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard the details of it. You guys are going to have to apologize. I apologize. I'm not sure when my power's coming back on, but I can still hear you, and hopefully you can still hear me. So the Democratic Socialists of America, all of them, the Communist Party of the United States, the ACORN, SEIU, I mean, these are all organizations that are designed really for one thing, and it's the complete overthrow of the United States, the constitutional framework. That's who they are. And we should anticipate that every single person rising up in the Democrat Party, the ruling elites, are going to have deep ties to these communist organizations. That's who they are. You cannot become a Democrat politician anymore without being a tried and true blue-blooded communist or fascist or Antifa or whatever you want to call them. there's no room for moderation in this party anymore. They are a radical party who wants to destroy the very framework of the United States. And we should have listened to Barack Obama when he stood on that stage in 2008. And he said that his goal is to fundamentally transform the United States. That's been his goal from day one.
Yes,
That's been his goal. And he was, to the chagrin of the United States, he's been incredibly successful at fundamentally transforming the United States. He changed us from a constitutional republic to, within a breath, an election away from moving into a full-fledged fascist state. There's no doubt about what their goal has been. It's been to destroy the Constitution. It's been to remake society. It's been to destroy every aspect of the American way of life and replace it with their false utopian, communistic, fascistic, whatever you want to call it. It's disgusting, but that's who they are, every one of them.
And the only thing separating us from that literally is what we know and what we're willing to stand up for. People, if you don't know what your rights are, you don't know to stand up for them. If we don't know our Constitution, how do we know they're breaking the law?
That's right.
I harken back to the COVID debacle when people were walking around with masks and you're having your HIPAA rights violated going to a football stadium. You had to download an app to prove you were vaccinated to go in and sit down. People were told that their particular wherever they worked, you might have been considered essential or not essential. When everybody is essential, paying my rent, feeding my children, that's essential to me. And yet the same people pushing this narrative were the same ones not following the narrative. Gavin Newsom is a perfect example. Nancy Pelosi is another great example. Going out to get her hair done. He's eating at restaurants, no masks, all the things they said that we couldn't do. How do you see us pulling away from this? How do you see the Trump presidency? And I guess what are your hopes on what you think he should attack first? What do you think that looks like?
This is probably going to be one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult things that any administration has ever had to undertake in our country. But I think I think with the people that he's tapping to move into the bureaucracy are going to be able to accomplish it. If in order for Donald Trump to be successful, he's going to have to completely wipe out the authoritarian state. That's his mission from top to bottom.
I'm thinking to myself, we get differing numbers, but for my take on it and the people that I've spoke to, the number of illegal immigrants in this country is up near 30 or more.
Yeah.
And 30 million folks or more. And Donald Trump is up against the unelected bureaucracy. And keep in mind, he only puts 3,000 people in office. He gets to choose 3,000 while there are over 3 million employees in the federal government. So nearly 1% of our population, very close to 1% of our population, works for the federal government. This was the reason why Donald Trump created DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. So he had to create an unelected bureaucracy to attack that bureaucracy, getting rid of things like the Department of Education and many others, returning the rights to the state, shrinking the government, putting the power back into the hands of the people. What is your take on DOGE, and what do you think they should do?
Well, so I don't know if you guys heard, Vivek Ramaswamy did a Tucker Carlson interview probably about 2 months ago. And I think could not have been more succinct in exactly what DOGE needs to be able to accomplish. They're going to have to radically reduce the size of the federal government, from personnel to spending. The bureaucratic state has to be dramatically slashed. And through that interview, he talked specifically about the best way to go about doing it. There's a couple of really small things that you can accomplish that, if you can get them accomplished, will have a massive, massive impact. Number one, did you know that right now the federal government owns about, is only currently occupying about 12% of the real estate and the buildings and the office space that they have on lease or own right now? That means that the vast majority of the federal workforce is working from home.
Yeah,
make them all go back to work. make every one of them go back into the office, and you're going to lose probably 20-25% of your workforce just by telling them they have to come back into the office because they won't want to do it.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
that's a simple change that you make. If you make that simple change, force them all back into the office, and then you start going after this idea that that you can't terminate federal employees. You can reclassify federal employees to at-will employees like every other employee in the country is. I don't know, the company I work for, the state that I live in, the most states in the country, your company can come in and fire you tomorrow if they want. They don't need a reason for it. They can just make a decision to do it. Federal government's not able to do that. Why not? Why is the federal government beholden to these labor contracts with these unions and these massive organizations that you can't terminate people? Get rid of more than half of the federal government tomorrow, and the government will work better, and it'll save us a boatload of money.
A lot more money. And this is part of the reason why they were talking about, well, where are we going to get all the money to get rid of the illegal immigrants from? Well, use the money that you're already using to house them. The stipends you're giving them every month with the EBT and the SNAP. Some people say it's upwards of $4,000+, 2 years of free rent. Use all that, put them on buses, send them back home. I don't think that it will cost us more than it will save us, and we'll be a lot safer for it. Now,
well, those numbers have been looked at. So there's been studies done on that, and you're absolutely right. Oh yeah, so absolutely. So
what's the offset?
So the way it looks is this. So right now the federal government is spending about $150 billion a year on illegal immigration, and that doesn't include the almost $250 billion a year that the states are spending. So we're spending right now about $400 billion a year on illegal immigration at the federal and at the state level. So studies have been done on this. If you do a quick, large scale deportation, it probably costs you about $100 billion to get everybody out of the country that you want to get out. If you drag it out over the course of the next 4 years, it could be upwards of $300 billion. So it's going to be expensive, but that's a one-time payment to get people out of the country. And you're saving yourself hundreds of billions of dollars a year by not having to support those people.
Now, I know we did this once before in 53. We sent 2.5 million. Well, with the resources we had then and the number of people in our population then as well, that was an undertaking to send 2.5 million people back wherever the hell they came from. And he did this because we had people returning from war and that, and they were inundating the job market, and he did what he did to help soldiers. So I don't think it's a task that is beyond us at all. I don't. But I do foresee the left using this to virtue signal,
sure,
and get in the way and cause a ruckus. But the thing that scares me about it is this: we have thousands of. I mean, you've seen Sarah Gonzalez's interviews on Sean Ryan, I'm sure, and a lot more documentation that are out there stating that there are many people on a terror watch list that made it their way into this country, and they're not here for a better way of life at all. They're here to hurt us. And many people have, and I'm not saying this, guys, but I'm just saying, I'm going to put it out there as a possibility, because it's still a possibility until we know for sure. But, California catching on fire the way it did, and many people are out there lighting fires. This is the perfect cover for a sleeper cell to go in and take an already bad problem and make it worse, and no one would know the difference. Those are things that we have to be concerned about. People's houses are getting looted. Who knows? People had made different claims about the inauguration. I've had people tell me not to go. There's a threat. That. I'm going. And no one's going to stop me from going. I'm going to be there. But there is a growing concern over these types of events being attacked by God knows who. Iranian missiles being in the country. We were talking with Congressman Tim Burchett the other day about that very thing, and about nuclear weapons being in the country. And they are on alert. They are on high alert. And the probability of something happening right now is pretty high. Look, from the first of the year, we've had Vegas bombing right next to my office over here. what happened in Louisiana, several other fires, shootings, you name it. It's been crazy for the last few weeks. What is your take on how do we attack that? If we start deporting people, do you think that we're going to have a fight on our hands, and what that looks like? What do you see there?
Well, I think the left is already signaling that there's going to be a legal fight from day one. They're going to be using every bit of lawfare that they can possibly use to stop it. But Donald Trump is just going to have to plow through it. I mean, that's the bottom line. He is the chief executive. The Constitution was written, Article 2 was written, and it gives him the sole executive power over the federal government. He's not beholden to bureaucracy. He's not beholden to, stalwarts in the Department of Justice. He's not beholden to a Department of Homeland Security that wants to drag his feet. He is the chief executive. I mean, that's the bottom line. So what he says goes. And if he wants to move 20 million people out of the country in a year, then he's just going to have to figure out how to make it happen. But I hear you and what you're saying in terms of the potential for terrorist attacks in the country. And I think we have to expect that that's going to happen. It's unfortunate, and nobody wants to accept the reality that Joe Biden has intentionally left our border wide open and has made us vulnerable. And you can't help but wonder whether or not he did it on purpose for this very reason. You can't, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. I know that he's a potato head. He's got mush for brains at this point.
He's definitely the antithesis of a rocket scientist.
But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that if you open the borders and you allow millions of people to come in, you're inviting terrorists into the country. It's just what's going to happen.
You'd be naive to think any different. Now, switching gears a little bit, some breaking news came out today, and I don't know if you saw it, but Steve Bannon took a hard line at Elon Musk, calling him evil, attacking him all over these H-1B visas, and the position that Elon took on that. And I'm going to play the clip for you real quick so you can get some perspective.
Your face, and I'm evil enough to be able to expose you as a running dog for the greatest enemy this nation's ever had. You are a war profiteer. You're sleeping with the enemy, brother, and you've been doing it because you're not an American nationalist. You're not even an American. All you are is a globalist, okay? A globalist. Elon Musk, once again, brother.
So there's that. I didn't quite, and this happened right before we came on. I saw this and I was like, I'm going to include this, but I personally don't even know how to feel about that. I don't think that I necessarily agree with Steve in this. I agreed with him on a lot of things. But after World War II, we took rocket scientists. We took everything. It made us the superpower that we are. And instead of leaving our border wide open for anyone to come over, I think we should be choosy. This is the best country in the world. Why shouldn't we expect people to be bright enough to actually add something of value to our society before we let them in? But I don't get this take on it. Yeah. What do you think?
I don't understand the Steve Bannon perspective. I think Steve Bannon and a few others, Laura Loomer, for some reason they fancy themselves as Donald Trump's protectors, as though Donald Trump is not capable of recognizing whether he's got wolf and sheep's clothing around him. A little bit. But I do understand the perspective that they are taking, which is, if you're going to have an American first agenda, then it needs to be an American first agenda. Now, the H-1B visa process does have merit, and I do think that there's some value to it, but it is being wildly abused right now. And it requires significant reform in order for me to feel comfortable with it. So in my day job, I actually work in the tech space. So I see this all the time. I see people coming from outside the country and taking coding jobs and tech jobs left and right, that I know that there's Americans that are capable of doing that work. They're just not. Now, I haven't done the deep dive into understanding all of the numbers behind it, but here's what I do know. The H-1B visa process is a lottery system. So if you're going to make the case that you're only bringing in the smartest and the brightest across the globe, then why do you have a lottery process? Because a lottery does not tell me that you're bringing in the best and the brightest. It tells me you're bringing in somebody like you're picking a number out of the hat.
Right. It's not based on the merit of the individual. It's based on whether or not they get the luck of the draw. It makes sense.
Yeah, and I'll also argue this. I mean, from the same type of tech companies like Apple and others who go over to China so they can use slave labor to build their devices, we should not at all be surprised to hear that people are concerned about the living wage conversation at the tech companies, whether or not these people are being brought in because they're capable of paying them a lower wage than an American citizen would be paid. It's true. I mean, the numbers back it up. So, Elon Musk, I think, brings a ton to the Trump administration, and I think he's really important. But I think Donald Trump is going to have to be very careful going forward in terms of how much he allows Elon Musk to define the agenda. Donald Trump needs to be the one to define this agenda. And if you want to keep the H-1B visa process, that's fine, but you have to address the shortfalls with the system because it's broken, and people are taking advantage of it right now. And I think that's all Laura Loomer, to some extent, maybe Steve Bannon are trying to call out, is that, hey, Elon Musk is not right on that one. And it's okay, but he's not right about it.
I think the approach for me is what kind of gives me a bad taste. I mean,
agreed.
With how close these guys are to the administration. Hell, I'm a nobody, and I can pick up the phone and get a message into the administration.
Mm-hmm.
I know Steve Bannon can, and I know Laura Loomer can. So I don't understand why they take to platforms like these in order to make this point and cause this division, because what it does is it causes people within this movement to take sides and weakens it. And instead of having a conversation, we can disagree with each other all day long, but we just need to have the conversation. And I'm sure that calmer heads will prevail. And if you're right, then we just adjust and move on. But that's, when Steve Bannon takes his position like that, it's very hard to have peace in this movement, because they see that when the left sees us fighting with each other, they pounce. Matter of fact, that's where I found the story at. Originally, it was on a lefty website. I didn't even know it existed, and they had it big as day right there, because that's where you can, if you want to find something out about the right, you typically are not going to look on Fox News. You're going to look somewhere else, and that's where you're going to find it. So this deal about Greenland and Canada becoming part of the United States started off as a joke. It started off as Donald Trump talking about 25% tariffs on Canada, which ended up with the prime minister quitting his job, like literally quitting his job. And now it looks like there's might be some seriousness behind this with Greenland, at least.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
And there absolutely should be. I always saw this for what it was. Donald Trump being Donald Trump, which, by the way, is one of the reasons why we love him so much, is because he has this really unique ability to bring people to the table when he wants to talk and negotiate about things. He always throws out this, this idea, and most people think he's crazy, but the truth is, it sparks interest and it gets people to the table to start having conversations. And I always recognize Canada was just Donald Trump trying to start a conversation about tariffs and about trade and about changing the political system in Canada. Let's be honest, Canada has been a communistic state for a long time. And if you want to have an effective trading partner, an economic partner north of your border, they're going to have to abandon communism that they bought into under Justin Trudeau. And I expected Donald Trump to be as successful in that effort as he has been. I mean, Justin Trudeau's gone. Paul Pierre-Levier, or however you say his last name, looks like he's poised to become the next prime minister. The people of Canada are sick and tired of communism. And I think this is just part of the pendulum swinging from totalitarianism, authoritarianism, back over to individual liberty and freedom. And Canada, and I think Donald Trump was just giving that pendulum a little bit of a nudge up into Canada. But Greenland, however, there's some real merit to that conversation. And there should be.
Militarily, I mean, you have, that whole waterway coming down toward America. If we don't have control of that, that's a real danger. That's a real danger. And then there's the Panama Canal as well.
Yep.
And we know that that should be ours. We paid in blood for it. So what do you think about that one?
This is all Donald Trump proving the point that he's been making for the last 8 years, which is the world has taken complete advantage of the United States. I mean, why should the United States be responsible for defending Greenland if we don't have a stake in the country? I mean, we are literally responsible for defending the waterways up there where our ships are transporting our goods around the world. If Denmark's not going to do it, somebody has to do it. Same thing with the Panama Canal. China has developed manufacturing bases all throughout South and Central America, and really even into Mexico, where if we're not staking our claim in the Western Hemisphere, who's going to do it, right? I mean, I would argue that if that's such an important route for us to move our goods around the world, then we absolutely should consider whether or not we should take it back from them if they're not going to protect it the way it needs to be protected.
And let's not forget that Trudeau allowed somewhere around 15,000 at last count Chinese troops to basically set up shop in Canada right above our border where they were doing training. They were training.
That's right.
But and then China is actually doing business with Mexico as well, and helping them develop infrastructure, which is a very dangerous thing for the United States, because if China goes into these places like Panama Canal, other countries in Central America, and provide the technology they need for their dams, for whatever, then the only way these people get upgrades or get that particular part or whatever it is from China. So China's kind of got them. And we just need to be the voice of reason and when this happens, and also when it comes to things like BRICS, which Donald Trump shut that down with a word the other day. India came right off of. What do you know about the BRICS situation?
I've looked at it a little bit, and for a while, I was a little bit concerned about whether or not BRICS was going to materialize into a real challenge into the dollar, and I think that has kind of gone up in smoke, mostly because Donald Trump is a man's man, and he knows how to negotiate. He knows how to get his point across. Joe Biden never would have been able to have the impact on India that Trump had with a simple statement. Trump. I mean, let's be honest. How can you call yourself a ally when you are partnering with a global union whose sole purpose is to destroy your dollar and thereby destroy your economy? And that's what India was doing. So when you throw the gauntlet down and say, you're going to have some problems if you continue down this path, and India steps away and says, wait, that's not our goal. That's exactly what you would expect an American leader to do. I understand BRICS from the perspective of, regionally, it does make sense for maybe some countries to do trade amongst themselves and their own form of currency. And I think that's fine. I think this idea that we have this centralized dollar that has to dominate the globe, I think is a little bit pie in the sky. And I think it lends a lot of that's what I'm looking for. It lends a lot of credibility to the Federal Reserve System that we all know is broken. So I'm okay with a bit of a decentralized currency system. But what I'm not okay with is a union organization that's sole purpose is to destroy your economy. And that's what India was signing up to do.
Well, yeah, they were trying to get rid of the petrodollar. And we already know how the United States treats people who want to nationalize. We did it to Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, anyone basically who wants to trade in their own currency and nationalize their GDP is typically we're to war with these people immediately. I mean, Kim Jong-il has nuclear weapons, and we didn't go to war with him. But Iraq says we don't have nuclear weapons, and we were there in a heartbeat. And it just so turns out that Saddam Hussein wanted to nationalize his oil and not do business with dollars. And a lot of people attribute the war in Iraq to that, at least partially. At least partially. So between that, let's jump over to schooling for a second. We've seen our kids attacked. We've seen the indoctrination take place in the classroom. We've seen an attack on American values. We've seen the rise of moral relativism. Nothing is right. Nothing is wrong. There's your truth and my truth, not the truth. This is something that as a conservative, we deal with at least once a day in some way, shape, or form. What's your take on it? I take it you're a dad by your screening.
I am. Yeah.
Okay.
So we homeschool both of our kids. Neither one of our kids have ever stepped foot into a public school, nor will they. For this very reason right here, we were very concerned about the secular progressive left and what they've done to the education system over the last 30 years, that we made some really difficult financial and lifestyle decisions when my oldest son, who will be 14 here soon, was getting ready to go into kindergarten. So my wife decided to come home, be a stay-at-home mom, and has raised both of our kids and homeschools both of them now. Thankfully, in my day job, I work from home also. So now we have a really unique environment where we're all here all day long. We get to participate in their education, and thereby we get to avoid the potential of having a progressive radical left indoctrinate our children. It is probably the most important issue in our country today is
Absolutely.
what is happening in the education system to our kids. And you can see the impact of what a centralized education system has done when you look at the propaganda that's coming out of universities, some of the Gen Z and even some of the younger millennials who will literally believe anything the government tells them without doing an ounce of research on it. They have been wholly corrupted. And I mean, it's not at all different from what Adolf Hitler did in the Nazi youth back in the 1930s and 1940s.
And the brown shirts and the Nazi youth went around Germany, destroying the place, causing problems, turned on their parents, would make phone calls on them and had their parents locked up. What happened when Hitler took complete power? What did he do with these same people?
He eliminated the problem, and he did it through the children. The Nazi youth is exactly what you're seeing play out in some of the Gen Z crowd in this country, where they are willing to break apart family units if their leader tells them to. They are willing to destroy the entire fabric of society if their leader tells them to. I mean,
what are some of the avenues that you see and how you, because I can look at it from every aspect of music, media, movies, whatever, and it seems like they're all on the same page, along with the media and the mainstream media specifically, but it looks coordinated. Right?
That's absolutely coordinated. There's a reason why Andrew Breitbart, rest his soul, before he died, was famous for this statement. He said that politics runs downstream from the culture. And basically what that means is the culture is always going to determine the political environment. The culture is going to be impacted first, and the political environment is going to be impacted next. And that is exactly what we've seen play out in this country. They recognize that if they could inject entertainment, music, Hollywood, academia, everywhere, every aspect of cultural life, if they could infect it with Marxist radicalism, with fascist indoctrination, with propaganda, it would eventually turn to the political system. And we've seen the political system make that shift in the last 20 years from a small government constitutional republic to a democracy. And if you understand what they mean by democracy, they mean control by institution. They mean a control by institution, and you actually heard a Democrat congressman stand up on the floor of the House the other day, right before Christmas, when they were freaking out about the continuing resolution that Elon Musk and the American people shut down. He stood up on the House floor and was going nuts, complaining about the institutions that got together to put that bill together, and how dare effectively the United States, the people of a country, come together and squash what the institutions have put together. Folks, what we're watching, this idea of democracy, is fascism. Yeah. It's fascism. Control of the country by institution.
A 100% real democracy is one stone throw away from socialism or even communism. Yeah. And people don't even realize it. It's just mob control. And when you couple that with censorship and the indoctrination that we had going on across this country, and they even advocated for getting rid of the electoral college, and people don't understand why. Well, if they did that, Maine, New Hampshire, and a lot of the smaller states in this country wouldn't have a say in a damn thing that happened from that point forward. All their decisions would be made by, New York and California and places like this, where it's more densely populated. When you couple that with the unfettered, immigration in this country, and just the media pouring, gasoline on the fire, mass hysteria will kick in. They'll be censoring us on. I mean, this conversation I wholeheartedly believe that we're having right now would be illegal if Kamala had won
Oh
the
yeah.
election. It would.
Well, you
It
know it
was.
would. So did you see the interview that Tucker Carlson, no, Joe Rogan did with Mark Andreessen, where so Mark Andreessen is a tech investor who I think was one of the investors responsible for the creation of Netscape, going all the way back to Netscape.
Yeah, that's a long time back. Yeah, I remember Netscape though.
But for many years, he's been a capital venture investor, and has been responsible for standing up a bunch of tech companies. And more recently, they've been investing in AI companies, AI tech. And last year, apparently, some officials from the Biden administration sat down with him and some other investors and said, "Don't even bother trying to start AI companies. We're not going to let you do it. We're going to control AI through 2 or 3 big companies. We're going to completely dominate it, and we're not even going to let anybody else in the space." That's fascism.
And it's also about control. We had a whistleblower from a company that oh my goodness, I can't think of the name of the company now. So there's one company, and I have to look it up. I'll have it by the end of the show because I don't want to say this without throwing out the receipts. But there's one company that actually does like the updates through the EVs. And it actually does all the upgrades and updates and houses all that kind of stuff. And the EVs, they take your pulse rate just by you holding the steering wheel. And imagine coupling your phone with that, or whatever conversation you have inside of this car as well. Well, the car collects data based on the maintenance that's needed, things like that. And all of the other data it collects is supposed to go into essentially a garbage file where it's deleted. It's petabytes of information that's being given to this company, however, that are supposed to be deleted. But what they're doing is they're taking all of that data about all of these Americans that are using these EVs, and they're using it to train their AI. I'm going to actually go find the name of this company because he sent us all the documents, and he sent us just a ton of stuff. So we're going to be handing this off pretty soon to the new administration once they're in office. But while I'm looking for this, let me ask you. So if the left knows how dangerous socialism is and where they're heading, why are they doing it?
That's such an important question. Have you ever read the book Road to Serfdom by Friedrich Hayek?
No, but I have heard of it.
If you haven't read that book, and for everybody listening, go read Road to Serfdom by Friedrich Hayek, who was an economist right about the same time that John Maynard Keynes was developing his economic theories on, government spending as a stimulus, which is complete nonsense. He wrote a book, Road to Serfdom, and in that book, he basically talked about the evolution of authoritarianism and why it is that authoritarian governmental systems always seem to be dominated by the worst characters that society can create, because it requires a certain off the charts level of egomaniac, just psychotic type of personality to want to drive a society into authoritarian dictatorship.
Similar
Honestly,
to Hitler's personality. Hitler had a personality just like that.
They're all like that. So when you ask the question of why do Democrats want to do it? Because they care more about their own power and their own money than anything. And actually, a lot of them are well beyond just the money. To them, it's about the power. It's about control.
Yeah,
they are largely narcissistic psychopaths who fancy themselves as being able to control society better than society can control itself. I think most of them don't even care about what the result will be. They just want to be at the top of whatever type of heap of communism they can create. That's my personal opinion, because there's been zero evidence throughout history that any of their agenda has ever worked. So
never, not one time has it ever ushered in a utopia. Millions of people die. It causes poverty, except for the top, 2 or 3% of people, and they're typically in government.
That's
and everyone else starves, and your bread lines and that sort of thing occur. We know how it ends, but you wouldn't think you would have to work as hard as we do to convince the people, especially the ones at most at risk, the ones that are the poorest right now. And these communities, the Democrats seem to have like almost a hypnotic hold, but that seems to be breaking now. I mean, you saw the map I did after this election, and they were really stunned that every demographic across the board came out and voted the way that they did. So I think we're starting to wake up, not woke, but actually waking up. And by the way, I looked at the company name. It's called Aptive. The company's name is Aptive. And yeah, so look those guys up. They actually do work with China, and they have a military portion of their company as well. So them collecting all this data and having a military operation as well, actually a portion of this looks like it's very questionable because they work with our military in China. So,
well, it sounds to me like that's the exact same type of setup that has got TikTok at a place where they're literally going to have to shut down their American platform on the 19th unless the Supreme Court steps in, because Congress and Joe Biden signed into law a law that's going to require them to either completely divest from ByteDance to be purchased by American investors or shut their doors because of the fear, the national security fear, which I think is stupid. There's no national security fear of people watching
no more
TikTok
than it is with anything
videos.
else.
But this company that you're talking about, the company you're talking about sounds like it's far worse than anything people are transmitting through TikTok. So why is TikTok being shut down? But this Aptive company seems to be fine. But I think it goes back to the broader point that you're making, which is Elon Musk absolutely broke the left, and they broke the censorship regime that they have been putting in place for the last 10, 15 years. And this is the reason.
It's historic.
What Elon Musk did to change the direction of the world is going to be written about for centuries. But I will argue until I'm blue in the face that we would not have a 47th. Donald Trump is a 47th president were it not for Elon Musk purchasing Twitter and giving people the ability to expose the propaganda that the left has been driving and indoctrinating and corrupting the minds of the American people with for the last 50 years.
I was utterly frustrated. I mean, years ago, we started out on Facebook as a platform, and just to kind of get the word out what the network was doing. And then I migrated after just absolute frustration on Facebook, time, reach being diminished, demonetization, strike here, strike there. YouTube, the same thing. You know, they YouTube even does it with you know, you have to go through little trainings. Did you understand this? Did you? It's really wild that publicly these companies are traded, and so you would think that the First Amendment would, you know, how can they say this person is putting out misinformation and we're the arbiters of truth? And how does that stack up against the First Amendment? I mean, TikTok is really guilty of this as well. I'm on my third
it's bad. Yeah, it's bad over there.
On TikTok, I think I've lost probably 18,000 plus followers. So what do you see happening with Mark Zuckerberg now saying he's going MAGA almost? And you know, I see that as like you kind of owe some people, like us, for instance. I mean, I had over 1 million person reach on there years ago. How far would I have been today if he wouldn't have stifled that growth on that particular platform?
Yep.
What do you see this whole thing with Mark Zuckerberg and social media in general evolving into under a Trump presidency?
I don't think you're going to be able to get the censorship regime put back into place again in this generation. I think it's done. I think it's over. I think the American people, once you break out of the matrix that they had spent decades building and convincing people wasn't real, but then they poke their heads out of it and they realize that they have been lied to and their voices have been suppressed, and they realize that they actually can affect change across the country by being able to speak out and use these social media platforms the right way. I don't think you can get that back again. I think that ship has sailed for the censorship regime and what their goal has been. There's going to be some holdouts. I think you're going to have, you're going to have a decentralized platform type of environment where you're going to have platforms like Blue Sky that'll pop up, and all the leftists who want to be able to create their conspiracy theories and talk about all the things they care about are going to go there. You're going to have everybody rational is going to spend time on X, and Facebook and Instagram are going to have to prove to the American people that they can be trusted again. I don't know whether TikTok's going to survive. I'm not betting any good money on the fact that they'll be around in another week or two, but you're not going to be able to get censorship back into this country the way that they've been doing it. And I think Mark Zuckerberg realized that if he wanted to remain a viable company, he had to make a change.
Yeah. He knew what he was beat. He knew he was beat.
Yep.
And but I would not go so far as the way he tried to play the victim.
Yeah.
Because he was supporting their campaigns. In fact, broke campaign finance law, doing it, giving a bunch of money out and breaking threshold. So, guys, listen. If you want to follow Patriot Dad, you can follow him at Patriot Dad EV77 on X. And before we get out of here, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we shut it down?
Gosh, there's so much running through my mind about what I want to say. I don't know about you, but I am just excited about what the future looks like. I do think that Donald Trump and this administration, really the American people, have a disaster waiting for us on January 20th. Joe Biden has destroyed every aspect of our country. He's destroyed our economy. He's destroyed the prices that you're paying. He's destroyed trust in government. He's created a lawfare doctrine that we have to dismantle. He's literally destroyed every aspect of the American way of life, and he did it in 4 years. And it's going to take a miracle to fix it, but I think we can. I absolutely think that if we want our country to become what we expect it to be, we should be expecting from Donald Trump some really big changes. Things like getting rid of the federal income tax entirely. If you want to kickstart this economy, you've got to figure out what you can do to radically jumpstart the economy, and you're going to have to be radical about it. Changing our tax code entirely, wiping out the IRS, going to a fair tax or some type of system that generates economic activity, getting rid of massive portions of the federal government that are bloated and are costly and are redundant and are inefficient. It's going to take a Herculean effort to get our country back on track, but I think it's possible if we do it fast and we do it right.
Yeah, if we do it without worrying about whose feelings we hurt in the process.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he's just going to have to just muscle his way through it and not listen to any of the noise, because they're going to make a lot of noise while he's trying to do what he's trying. I think Tom Homan has his work cut out for him, and so does Doge. Yep. But I'm hopeful that over the next couple of years, and when we get to our midterms, that we see even more seats taken away from people. And I'm urging the regular moms and dads and working class folk that are out there that have political aspirations, that care, to run for your school boards, run for your city councils, get involved. Yeah. Because if you don't, it's not going to change. You keep thinking someone else is going to do it, someone else. No, it's not. It's got to be you. It's got to be you. So I say this all the time before we get out of here. I'll say it again. The silent majority, you need to stop being silent and stand your ground. Evil will never retreat willingly. It must be beaten back. We'll see you next time on the Patriot. Go ahead.
I was going to say this, and to the point that you just made, I think is such a critical one. A year ago, the platforms that I had built was about 10,000 followers on TikTok. And I just got fed up of watching people not saying what's on their mind. So I started using that platform to create content and talk about the things I cared about. Nothing special. I'm nobody special. I just started using my voice. And now across that platform, it's over 400,000 people that care about what people think and they want to hear it. So I would just encourage everybody else to get out from behind your cameras, turn them on, create content, tell people what you believe in, tell people what you care about, because we want to hear it. And that is what it's going to take to change the culture again to a place where the American people can feel proud of who we are.
You got to stop being silent. That's what I said. You got to stop being silent, guys. If only people knew how many people around them felt the way that they do, maybe they would be a little more courageous about speaking their mind. That's why
That's right.
I wear this thing everywhere. It doesn't matter to me where I'm going. I don't mind the looks. And that's exactly why I'm going to the inauguration, and we'll be back for CPAC a month later. We'll be broadcasting from CPAC on the 19th, 20th, 21st, and the 22nd, guys. Don't miss that. But yes, it's got to take us all willing to put on our MAGA shirts, speak loud and proud about what it is that you believe, and don't be afraid of pushback. Just know that 90% of the time, especially for conservatives, it's how we started to show off. We're a little more research than they are. They're a little more feeling based. Speak your mind and let the chips fall where they may. But if everyone did it, I think that so much would change, and very fast. Very, very fast. Dr. Gold, thank you. Appreciate you guys. Anacom Girlie, appreciate you. Guys, we will be back again tomorrow night. Look forward to Cowboys and Indians with Steve Loves Ammo and Maurice at the Native Patriot on X, and all the whole host of families of podcasts here on PPN. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next time. Have a great one.
Thanks.